Hey, what is up guys, Semo here, and today's gonna be a little video for you guys about how to shade. So I've noticed a lot of people ask me, how do I render so well, how do I shade so well in my digital art, and I just wanted to make a short video on some of the techniques that I use and the way I think about shading from both digital in traditional, and then how that transfers over into digital. So this can also help you with understanding shadows in general, because that's kind of the baseline of what you need to understand is what shadows are. So if we let's start with traditional, and you'll notice that a lot of these techniques are things that I use in my digital work, especially if you watch my shorts. But if we grab let's grab a circle, right? That's the simplest thing. Grab a circle. Obviously, this is not going to be perfect. I'm standing up and, it's just better. So we grab a circle, and let's say we want to see where the light is. Well, automatically there's one mistake here, right? This circle contains lines, right? So you have to wonder, okay, what are lines in shadows, right? Well, lines are the shadows themselves, right? So you have to think of the lines as the shadows. So wherever you would place lines at, that is where you would place the darkest shadow, right? So if we shade these, let's do a light circle, right? And let's shade these lines in as dark as we can. And this, you'll notice that I do this when I'm trying to get folds in some of my character skins and add like a lot of texture. So, and some mistakes that you will notice too is people assume that because a light source, let's say this light source is coming from up here, right? People will assume that this line here doesn't exist because of what I'm saying, but it does exist. This is why when you're looking at something that it has light directly on it, you still notice the outline of it, right? So there's still a light shadow here, and then the darker shadows here. So a light line and the darker shadows, right? So you have to change the way you think about shadows, change the way you think about the real world, and understand that what we're perceiving here, I mean, you can look at this, side of the book right here. There's no line here, but there's a shadow that indicates the depth of the fold of the book, right? And that's the same thing you have to view when it comes to drawing shadows. So, and you'll notice this if I ever do live streams, I always run this type of technique back and forth because it's a good technique to have. So you'll notice that the light source comes from up, and there's still a shadow there. It's just a very light shadow, right? The only time that there will be a lack of shadow, which again I would advise not to draw things like that, simply because it's not necessarily a really good reference, because it kind of drowns out, you lack the shadow, so then you'll tend to lack the form of it. And now if you're doing a little bit of color, that does change, because now the color or the value of the color actually changes or adds to the shadow itself. I hope this video is it's non-scripted, so I hope that my points are coming across a little bit better. I'm gonna continue here with the shadow, or with this circle. And then you notice here too, right, where I'm adding these, like, the form. I'm going with the form of the circle, of the sphere, right? And then I'm lighting it up. Then you darken it here a little bit more. So one of the interesting things too is this little technique still works for digital work, right? Now you'll notice in my digital work, I'll grab a smudge tool and smudge it out. And there you go. Now, when it comes to masking and stuff like that, it's easier to do it on the digital because you don't have to worry about cleaning up the sides. So the whole point is to not focus on shadows. Don't focus too much on the line work and focus more on what the lines actually represent. And obviously this does depend on the style that you're using. For instance, more 2D cell shading relies on the lines being real thick and having different line weights on them, and that kind of alludes to deeper shadows. But again, they're all illusions for shadows, right? As an artist, your goal is to trick the mind into seeing something, given, kind of like magicians, right? We're trying to make the eye see something that isn't necessarily there. Okay, so let's hop right into the digital format, and I'm going to run over uh, how it works digitally, right? So let's draw that circle sucks. Let's draw a circle. It's not pretty, and let's fill it in, right? Matter of fact, let's change that to something. Let's change it to this color, right? So as you can see, this is the base layer of a circle, right? We're acting as if I colored in a circle, and like I mentioned before with the colors, that's how we're gonna be viewing this, right? Now let's add a clipping mask, right? And for me, digital wise, I just like to multiply, makes it easier. I'm gonna just go with, let's say, a darker value for gray. And now what we'll do is add the darkest layer, right? Fill that in. And if I was sticking with cell type shading, then this would work, but I'm not, so let's darken that up, which there's multiple ways you can do this too. Right now I'm just doing it like this. Right. So, and then we combine them. Now what I'll do here is you have two choices. With this app, there is a smudge tool, right? And then there is a blending tool. Well, no, this is the smudge tool, my fault. So this is the smudge tool, and then this is the blending tool. I prefer doing smudges when it comes to adding like textures and stuff, as you can see, because you can smudge further in, so you can add more shadows farther into the item that you're shading, right? So you can see how I turned it from a low end to a higher end of shadow. And we can be pushing up here, and now we could do the same thing for this bottom portion. Now, depending on how much you can get into this, you can get actually really, really detailed shading with this, which you guys probably seen in some of my shorts, where some of my things can be really, really detailed. Let's actually darken this value down. Right. Am I going crazy? Why wasn't this one? Okay, this is okay. Sorry. You guys can notice sometimes that I get really, really detailed with some of these shadows and stuff. So as you can see, Now this was just using the smudge tool, right? And a lot of apps have these types of things. This was, which is the high paint. I really enjoy it. Now I wouldn't necessarily use this one right here, which I don't know. This is the smudge tool. No, this is the. I don't even know anymore. You know what? Just duplicate them. No, I can't. So it just depends. For me, I enjoy using the smudge tool because I can control where the shadows go. So, and then if we go back into, let's say I want to make more of a texture, right? I want to add textures to these. So what I'll do is darken this up on both sides. Use the smudge tool to create this little shadow on the side of it. Which again, you probably wouldn't necessarily do something like this. This is just a technique that I use. And then drop it a lot. Add a little bit more. But you want to smudge these out. So this is what I'm talking about when I say like lines are just shadows. So you have to actually fundamentally think of lines differently. And I promise you, once you start thinking about lines as just shadows and not lines, right, your work will get a lot better. At least your rendering and stuff like that will get a lot better. And there you go. Now we can see that the light comes from the top, and even though it comes from the top, the texture from the balls right here. Hold on. Like these little texture lines can be seen through the shadow. Now you can make these really, really detailed, way more detailed than I did. I'm just doing a short video for you guys. And they can be extremely detailed to the point where you can even, I mean, depending on your resolution, you can get down in there and draw lines like this and then smudge them out a little bit to even go further than what you was initially doing, right? So yeah, if we're gonna round everything up right here at the end of the video, lines are shadows, and when you're rendering shadows, trying to shade in things, you need to use your lines as an illusion for shadows. View the lines as just shadows. I hope this helps. If it helps at least one person understand the dynamic of shadows and how they work and how to shade and render better, then, you know, hopefully these tips help. I don't know if I'm going to keep up trying to give out tips like this. These are just things that work for me. So if there's artists out there who watch these videos and say, that doesn't necessarily make too much sense, I get it. Like I said, this is just for me. This is the way my mind works towards these things. This is how I've transferred from traditional to digital, and how I was able to connect everything together. And some people have asked me how I did this, how I render like this. So hopefully, this can give some type of help to those types of those people. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, drop a like. And if you guys have any other questions on drawing or any video suggestions, please just let me know in the comments. Thank you very much and have a good day.